Alright, welcome everyone to the first episode of the Saga of the Voidmaiden. In this epic homebrew adventure written by yours truly, you will watch the officers of the rogue trader Lord-Captain Calindrar Lharl as they investigate a mysterious signal that has all but commanded the attention of the Lharl dynasty. Previous to this adventure, the Voidmaiden had just left Footfall, the massive void port station that sits at the edge of the Koronus Expanse, and tangled with a crew of pirates that worshipped one of the Imperium of Man's greatest enemies, the Chaos Gods. Dealing with such a heretical threat was dangerous for all involved, especially since some of the members of Calindrar Lharl's Officers Corps have their own dark secrets. But if the crew thought that they were going to be able to get some rest soon, they thought wrong. The cast of characters includes Dalvan Tirvanos. Calindrar's seneschal is a master of coin and trade. A true servant of humanity, he is one of the least augmented humans Calindrar has ever met, and the man's claim that he doesn't need such things to be effective in his role have proven true thus far. It doesn't help things that he is also often full enough of foresight that Calindrar's personal desires are seen to even before he asks, a skill that you just can't put a price on. Winter Vector Shield. Serving not only as Calindrar's personal pilot, Winter is also an expert in fighter sorties, organizing the fighter wings on board the Voidmaiden itself. Having served with distinction in the Calixus sector, she was swooped up by the Lord-Captain, who now sees her as his confidant, as the battlefield-born and battlefleet-trained woman has loyalty to spare. Melissa Mouse Harding. The Explorator on board the Voidmaiden appears for all intents and purposes to be just a diminutive version of other tech priests, but looks are truly deceiving here. Many of her implants are false, and even her face mask is a facsimile that digitizes her voice. Mouse's real implants are beyond what many members of the Mechanicus have ever seen, and are beneath her skin, bringing worrying questions of whether she is born of the Imperium at all, but she seems to have the crew's trust. For now. Jyoti. A native of Nocturne, Jyoti has traveled far afield in an attempt to reach an unreachable goal. Compassionate to a fault, this member of the Prometheum cult branch of the Ecclesiarchy had her brother chosen for ascension to become an honored member of the Salamanders, a chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. With this ascension denied to her, despite her training and dedication, Jyoti left her home on a journey to perfect herself, a path that never ends. Tehran. By far the largest and yet the most secretive of the Lord-Captain's officers is the space marine that graces his vessel. The presence of an angel of death on board the Voidmaiden encourages and terrifies the crew in equal measure, but few know when the man boarded the vessel, because when Calindrar first reclaimed it from the depths of space where his forefather had lost his life, Tehran was already there, and he now guides with a steady hand and a keen eye as he tracks down information considered heretical by many. With this mysterious group of senior officers, the Voidmaiden sets out to discover the secrets buried within 35P MagorosB, and discovers that not all secrets are worth having. Even ones that bring peace and tranquility can deny you any dreams you once had, leaving you with only the namesake of this very adventure, a cold kind of purity.
When we last left our band of intrepid space adventurers, normally it's just intrepid adventurers, you had managed to leave the previous system full of space wreckage and detritus, and your vessel, the Voidmaiden, has finally emerged into the Magoros system. Calindrar, of course, being the kind of Lord Captain that he is, requested everyone to be on the bridge when the ship came out of the warp. And when you emerge, it is quite the sight. Currently at the edge of the Magoros system, you are able to see very clearly the beautiful and rather bright pulsar at the center of it. This pulsar actually causes you to be able to occasionally see the void shields surrounding the vessel, as the radiation bursts from it come in waves that wash over the entirety of the ship and cause several systems to go slightly, shall we say, cattywampus for a few moments. No sooner had the lot of you finished kind of taking in the sights or looking inquisitively over at the shuddering systems nearby, then one of the members of the crew stands up and says, "Lord Captain, I'm receiving a signal," which causes Calindrar's brow to furrow quite angrily. Not again.
Not again?
The last time that we got a signal, I think you remember what happened. We ended up drawn off course, dealing with some crazy pirates on a space station, and lost almost the entirety of our complement of fighters. Anyway, let's see what this is. The woman in question goes over the message several times and is able to confirm that it is a high-level administratum code of acquisition, which is a manner of distress signal which requires any Imperial vessel to immediately turn to lend aid if it is physically capable of doing so. To fail to do so is to willingly work against the needs of the Imperium of Man, which is something that one should not do lightly, should you wish to be a loyal servant.
Has the authenticity been verified?
She looks to Dalvon and nods and says, "It's an older code, sir, but it checks out."
Not something I like to hear.
There's also the fact that this could be a very effective delaying tactic if it is being used by someone not authorized to do so.
And we do have our fair share of enemies. You're correct. One, in fact, that we are trailing ever so slightly behind. Where is the signal coming from? Calindrar turns to the master of the Augur array, who shakes his head and continues making modifications to several different sets of switchboards and levers. Unfortunately, it's proving to be particularly difficult to track down, Lord Captain. The large amount of ambient solar radiation is, pardon the turn of phrase, tainting the income of the sensors. Calindrar immediately turns and looks to Mouse. Do you think you could perhaps give the Augur some assistance?
If that is your will.
It is.
Then it shall be done, Lord Captain.
So you are able to determine, Dalvon, that there is a planet with a wildly different orbit than the others in the system. You can plot its physical location, but unfortunately, nothing more.
Captain, we got a drunk planet out there.
I'm sorry, a drunk planet? Like the whole planet?
Yeah, its orbit is erratic, I should say. Drunk seems to be the proper definition of it.
Navigation, give me a visual of the course of this drunken planet. Shortly afterwards, Calindrar gathers the group around a hollow station, and you are staring at the system. Contains the central star, the pulsar, and 2 planets with miscellaneous moons orbiting them, and then a 3rd planet that is a much greater distance from and has a much wider orbit around the pulsar. Not entirely unknown, but normally celestial objects tend to fall into a more regular alignment than this. And you were able to gain nothing more from any other checks of the system?
Unfortunately, not too much, Lord Captain. As our tech priest Mouse said, it's these flares are messing with the circuitry as much as I would know.
Understood. All right. Dalvon and Tehran, I want you to form the 2 sides of a joint task force to go down onto the surface of the planet. If the codes of acquisition are coming from this planet's surface or from a low orbit station or what have you, then we are required to lend it aid, and I won't leave them out in the dark. Dalvon, primarily, you are in charge of any negotiations, etc. Tehran, what your duty is should probably be obvious. Should things turn south, take command of the situation and deal with it with extreme prejudice. I expect that all of my officers are capable, and you have proven to be nothing but exactly that in the past, so I am comfortable in charging you with this. I will stay on board the Voidmaiden, just in case we need to bring in the cavalry, as it were.
Yes, sir.
It will be several hours before we are at the point where you can pilot a lander down onto the planet in any decent amount of time, so I will take us into low orbit. Until then, Mouse, Dalvon, anyone else who cares to assist, see if you can get more information from the Augur array. Hopefully we can get a at least slightly better view of what it is we are sending you into. This array is supposed to allow us to know what kind of planet and what kind of safety precautions we need to take. If we're not able to find anything else, then we'll stock the ship with void suits and all manner of supplies, and you can do like my father used to do. When his Augur was down, he just took every safety precaution he could, threw it at the wall, and figured out what stuck.
Jody would have a question concerning, do we have an identification number for the planet?
We don't even know what planet this is. There were only supposed to be 2 stellar objects orbiting the Magoros pulsar. So, since its designation is unknown, we are calling it 35P MagorosB.
So you're saying that it's probably like a rogue planet from what I'm understanding?
It's possible. It doesn't seem to line up with the orbit of any other celestial body. It's also entirely possible that this is a unknown planet that has been orbiting for quite some time and whose signature was just disguised by the radiation of the pulsar. Considering the level of codes they are sending, there must be either some kind of Imperial station on the planet, or someone who has access to those level of codes.
And the tools required to be able to send those codes, especially out through this pulsar.
Yes, the fact that we were able to pick it up upon emerging from the warp over the background radiation in this system suggests a particularly powerful array. Not the kind of thing that I would expect a insane group of tribal cultists and madmen to build and man. So, with any luck, you will just be going onto some manner of research station, or perhaps a secret administratum storage vault? Unfortunately, it is useless for me to continue to speculate. You will know soon enough.
I think Jyoti probably cautioning the Lord Captain about the fact that this could be the Inquisition trying to get in contact with someone to garner their assistance in some difficult matters.
Well, let's hope that that is not the case, because that is not something that I would particularly enjoy. But if they need our assistance, then we are honor-bound to aid them. Yeah, so unless anybody else has things that they want to gather or stuff that they want to do, let's go ahead and go back to Mouse attempting to manipulate the Augur array, and Dalvon attempting to interpret the results. You actually do have to do several different calculations and feed that back through a couple of other subsystems, but the information that you're able to determine with the array is rather significant. This planet that you are now swiftly approaching is a verdant world, covered in teeming biomass, strangely warm despite its distance from the star, about that of a jungle over the majority of the planet. The warmth of the planet seems to come mostly from the presence of life on it, and a much warmer core, which causes large vented areas in several places on the surface. The heat leaks off of it like a trail as it travels through the system's irradiated space, makes it especially hard to locate the physical form of it, as you have to follow it like a comet. And had the signal not been there, it's most likely that you would have picked it up as a comet trail and just never thought anything else of it. There is a large weather pattern that's present on the planet, and the signal seems to be coming roughly from the center of that, from a series of what appear to be man-made structures that have been raised on a significantly barren strip of land. Considering that most of the planet is covered in thick, teeming jungle-like growth, a cleared-out space with man-made structures screams the Imperium has been here.
Do you want to tell the Lord Captain this, or do you want this unit to tell the Lord Captain this?
It's over the course of a couple hours is when you're able to suss out this information, and you're on the bridge when you do it. So Calindrar is checking in with you every so often as he's seeing to other navigational concerns. By the time he comes back, you have a plethora of information. And when you share it, the rest of the officers are called back to the bridge, and the bays are open as you head to the planet and get close enough for a physical view of it. Upon reaching orbit, a large weather front is visible from the viewports. According to the Augur array, this is actually a large snowstorm that seems to be butting up against an almost global weather event that sees immense amounts of unknown spores present in the air above the jungles. This particular weather front is of immense interest, as there are similar natural weather effects at the poles, but this storm is near the equator of the planet, yet has the same average ambient temperature as an area only a few dozen nautical miles from the polar caps.
Well, this looks like it's going to be a lovely trip.
Calindrar turns and looks to Dalvon and says, "My friend, I suggest that you pack jungle wear and snowshoes." And he smiles, gives you a look that tells you he is rather glad that he said you were going down and not him.
Lord Captain, judging by the atmospheric conditions I'm seeing, this is going to be a very turbulent landing.
Well, if there's anyone that can smooth it out, I trust that's going to be you. You have permission to use my personal lander for this flight, as that will ensure the greatest amount of safety. Fortunately, we did get some reading back on the atmospheric composition, and despite the large amount of spore growth in the air, and that is what it is breathable, well within human norms.
I still recommend everyone wear a breathing apparatus. Spores can cause problems.
Yes, and a coat. Probably a coat as well. I'll be on the bridge. Calindrar turns and heads back over to the navigator's array. He does have that slightly cheeky way of him, and you would swear sometimes that he battles back and forth between being the Lord Captain of an extremely important investigatory vessel hell-bent on gathering information and great wealth for the Imperium, and a 16-year-old kid who just wants to make fun of the color of your shoes. So, heavy clothing, and also an array of light clothing for, going through the jungle is loaded onto the vessel, along with 4 hard void suits and 4 soft void suits, depending on what is necessary. You all climb up into the lander and launch off. Upon breaking the atmosphere, Winter is forced to do some rather quick thinking, utilizing the lander's engine flash from changing between high and low power to clear the engines of spore buildup, which threatens to overrun the vessel's filters. So, fortunately, it's only after a small amount of time of everyone having to jerk forward and backward and forward and backward as the amount of thrust is greatly increased and decreased to flash out the engines, that you break through into the more clear weather. It's difficult to call it clear considering the fact that you just flew into a snowstorm, but once the vessel pushes into the snowy weather, things relax considerably, and everybody feels a wave of calm wash over them as the worst of the flight is behind them. It is still a rough enough flight in the snowstorm, but less terrifying until the landing pad of the facility comes into view. As you close in on the series of large hexagonal landing pads, the blast from your engines blows clear the snow that covers part of the Inquisitorial seal that shines from beneath the smooth glacial surface of the landing pad. This is most definitely an Inquisitorial bastion.
And this is where we will leave our band of explorers. With the Lord Captain's personal lander setting down on the pad, there is now no doubt that what they have found is a facility that belongs to the God Emperor of Mankind's most holy Inquisition. Normally a group to be avoided, the Inquisition wields unimaginable power, but with a distress call reaching out like this, the crew of the Voidmaiden cannot afford to deny them the assistance they require. What that assistance is remains to be seen, but when it comes to the Inquisition, one thing is always certain. It will not be simple or easy. And as you consider that, allow me to go over the list of the amazing people that made this video possible, starting with the folks in the power tier, like David, Doodlepoodle, Jay Jones, John the Wicked, and William Smith. In the planar tier we have CJ, Darth Cavalier, Gordy Danke, Ice Dragon, Jesse Labrie, Joshua Williams, Sparkle Lord the Fabulous. In the adventurer tier we have All Is Fiction, Bastion Falconwrath, Dragon Tempest, John R300, Justin, Katie, Mystics, Sneaky GI, Sue Crash, Ty Korzak, and V. In the quest giver tier we have Anon44, Bird or the Cage, Emanon, Kate, Kyla, Night Archer, ODST Hero, PPNTT 807, Robert Mischief, Rio 1990, Samantha, Sephiroth Kurosame, and Slathar Silcon. And in the townsfolk tier, we have Adrian, Blizzard Hawk, Biz Adrian, Dylan Taylor, Doodle Poodle, Ice Commander, Enrique, Matus, Okada, Scott Stedman, Sergeant Humpty, Shugenja, Tom Brazeau, and Wicked Ways. And a special mention, of course, as always, to Scion of Magnus and Sammy Wolf. And as always, we can't forget our crew here: Doodle Poodle, Nala Fontaine, Shadow Wolf, Scorpius187, MC_Cheshire, Thriving Inferno, and the Forever Servo Skull. Me. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you in the next one. Good night, all.